our class, which is Pema Chodron's Becoming a Bodhisattva or No Time to Lose. Before we get started, I'd like us to take a few minutes to just settle in and bring ourselves here to this present moment. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dhamma, homage to the Sangha. So for this week, we were to read Using Our Intelligence and Awareness. And for me, it was a really powerful chapter. It gave me an opportunity to really look at and settle into what causes so much suffering. And I always repeat the story. Can you hear me okay? And Nancy?
I was just confused. I thought we were on chapter 3.
Commitment. Oh, okay, you're right.
Okay.
Well, awareness is really good too, let me say.
I know.
And I got a lot out of it. So chapter 3 it is. Well, actually, we did that commitment. We went back. Did anybody read? Did anybody but me read chapter 4?
I thought we were supposed to read the chapter on using our intelligence also.
Okay. And what you did too? Yeah.
And I thought we
All right, so we have a mixed
through
mixed
3 last
review.
time.
We'll review a little bit about commitment, and then I'll step into and talk a little bit about awareness, using our intelligence. So looking at commitment, we did talk about the deep inquiry when I talked with Paniwati last week, and she had talked about noticing the tattered spaces. And so just as a review, does anybody want to share a little bit more about what they got from that particular chapter?
So I'd like to say something
Yes.
What I became very clear about was the importance of understanding a commitment, and then also the importance of keeping a commitment. And especially, you know, in regard to what we're studying as far as bodhisattvas, is like, what am I willing to commit to as far as that's concerned, or committing to the life of a bodhisattva. So that was my experience.
Thanks, Elsie. I think of making any level of commitment, whether it's through vow or a personal commitment to self, is really important. And what are you willing to do? I know I've shared this as well. The naturopath once said to me, I was being asked to stop all the food and re-enter pieces of food bit by bit, kinds of food. And I kind of crunched up my face and went, ooh, and she goes, well, what are you willing to do to feel better? And that has always stuck with me over and over again, with a commitment to being a bodhisattva or a commitment to ourselves. What are we willing to do to feel better? And as I would say to teachers that I was working with, if it's working, keep doing it. If at the end of the day you feel good about what you're doing and how you've done it, then keep doing it. But if it's not working, if you're finding yourself with levels of suffering coming up over and over again, something else must be sitting out there waiting for you. So I appreciate that comment, Elsie. Other thoughts about commitment from this chapter? One thing that did come up in the next chapter that I didn't want to spend some time on, and that's the word Shenpa. And I think it's a very powerful word. What is Shenpa? It's attachment, right? Attachment. And we can look at what we get attached to throughout the day, because I'm sure we'll find that every turn of the corner. And how we get grabbed by it, by our attachments, whether it's food, whether it's a sunny day like we have, whether it's about, as I said, the sunshine, whether it's about the next best thing that's going to happen, our attachment and what we do with it and where we go with it. One of the things, if you've got the book, and again, I'm not sure if I've got the Becoming Bodhisattva book, and we know that No Time to Lose is got the similar content, but on page 61, Lama Chodron talks about and gives us a quote from Ziegler Cantrell, and he describes it as a charge behind emotions that Shenpa is. The charge behind I like and don't like. The charge behind self-importance itself. And so I'd like you to just take a second to think about where that showed up for you, just even this morning already. Where does Shenpa show up? How does it show up? And what happens when you encounter that? Do you recognize that that's what's going on? Everybody's got something to share, that'd be great.
You say Shenpa is attachment, right?
Yes.
Driving home from here last Sunday, I think it was, I realized that I had an underlying current of sadness all my life. And I didn't realize that until just this Sunday. And then I recognized that this was the underlying emotion between my mother and my father, though they never spoke of it. And they had a good life and they were very good people and they were very good parents. But both of them had an underlying sadness to them, which became then who I was. And not a sadness that prevented me from doing anything or accomplishing, but just it underlaid me. And I realized that that's why, because I was also very serious, that people weren't drawn to me. It wasn't popular. Well, who would be popular to somebody whose energy was sad and serious? And I look at my life today, which is abundantly fortunate. Why am I sad? And so I realized greatly it's a part of the brain chemistry, it's part of the physiology of the brain to act this way in a physiological way. But that's not the self. And so I did a lot of work to just let that little girl go, be comforted, and realize the self, whichever self, doesn't have to be sad. And the key to that physiologically is to smile. Because when we smile, it actually changes the brain chemistry. And that I'm committed to smile and be happy. I guess I was afraid that happy was not in the middle, equanimity, that it was wrong to be happy because happy is the opposite of sad, and that's part of duality. And now I'm thinking, well, the Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas are happy, bliss is happy, so I could be happy. And gave myself permission to be happy, not because of anything in my life, but just because that's the goal.
Thank you. Others? Further down on that page, she says, Shempa is a feeling of getting hooked, a nonverbal tightening or shutting down. And then goes on to describe, suppose you are talking to someone and suddenly you see her jaw clench, she stiffens or her eyes glaze over. What you're seeing is Shempa, the outer manifestation of inner tug, subtlest form of aversion or attraction. We can see this in each other. More importantly, we can feel this charge in ourselves. So we can have Shempa in all sorts of manner or form, possessions, emotions, and later in the next chapter we talk about another Tibetan word, kleshas. And kleshas are the emotions that come with that. And she speaks a lot about that in that chapter. But any other comments or thoughts about this level of commitment that we're making in chapter 3?
Hi, this kind of goes back to Thursday a little bit on 3.18, where it says, for those who wish to go across the water, may I be a boat, a raft, a bridge. So it's not relying on anything but what I've already been given to do that. That was important for me.
Thank you, Nancy.
It occurs to me that commitment evolves because I can commit to practice, commit to the mind transformation we're trying to do as much as I can remember to do it throughout my day. But I don't fully understand where we're going. So I'm committed to doing what's necessary to get there, but I don't really, I'm not what I'm trying to say, is I can fully commit to the practice. I can fully commit to what I can get my head around. And I have to leave the rest sort of on the shelf in terms of a sort of a clear, concise direction, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a conversation we had last week around intention. And being able to set an intention when we start our day. And being able to make a commitment to ourselves to follow through on that intention. I mean, the truth is we only have today. And sometimes the road, we can take a map and we can follow that map, and it's a great idea to go down this road, and then pretty soon, like right out here on Willow, there's a detour or a one lane, or we don't know what we're going to find next. And so it's really important to just, I think, make that sense of intention to, as we were told going into India one day, flying in, this woman that was from India was coming to see her parents, and she said the best way to be in India is to simply say, come what may. Mm-hmm. And so that is really something that stuck with me, certainly through my times in India, but also each day, come what may. I'm awake and I'm here today, and this is what I've got. And then the next thing is I'm teaching this class, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And just being open and resolute to staying with what is. So I can appreciate that, and being able to put things on the shelf, I think, can be really healthy. Any other thoughts or comments? I think a page on page 68, 3.24, verse 24. Just so, and for the benefit of beings, I will also have this attitude of mind, and in those precepts, step by step, I will abide and train myself. And we talked about this last week again, it's step by step. You know, the truth is the way some of these sidewalks are, if you don't do step by step, you're going to find yourself flat because you've tripped over something that is buckled up. And it's a great practice, I think, for ourselves to just take step by step what we've got. Here's what's in front of me. This is how I manage what I've got today. And the other thing that came up that we talked about was just like me. And being able to be with others in a way that as we're confronted with behaviors or situations that are difficult, to be able to step back and just simply look at them. And just like me, they may be having a hard day. Just like me, they may be struggling. Just like me, there's something else going on. I used to say to the teachers when I was in the schools, look beyond the package. When they look at it, when you look at a student and you look at their behavior, look beyond the behavior. What are they trying to say with that behavior? And it could be just what they're saying, but just like me, they may be struggling at some level. And he ends this chapter by looking at this precious human life. And this keeps coming up for us, I think, because it's so critical. This is a precious human life. Pema Chodron says, we don't want to squander this precious human birth, strengthening negative habits and weakening our capacity for enlightenment. Verse 28, for I am like a blind man who has found a precious gem within a mound of filth. Exactly so, as if by some strange chance, the enlightened mind has come to birth in me. And finally, the last two verses in this chapter, Shantideva says, living beings, wayfarers upon life's paths, who wish to taste the riches of contentment. Here before you is the supreme bliss. Here, O ceaseless wanderers, is your fulfillment. And so within the sight of all protectors, I summon every being, calling them to Buddhahood, until the state is reached to every earthly joy. May gods and demigods and all the rest rejoice. Pema ends this chapter by saying, in this last line, Shantideva exhorts us to fulfill our birthright. Until then, he wishes us every earthly joy, all the helpful circumstances we need to relax and enjoy our journey to enlightenment. So as I brought up last week, the birthright. So we get to have this. We get to step into this opportunity. It's a huge gift. Any other comments for chapter 3? I would like to, Nancy, just kind of drive along with us on this next chapter then.
Oh, I'm good at that.
So chapter 4 is using our intelligence and awareness. And Pema Chodron starts with, this is the ideal state of mind for awakening bodhicitta, awareness. We know we want to be part of making things better, and we need to get saner to do this effectively. It's the perfect place to start. And again, we've been talking how it really has to start with ourselves. It's more of a challenge to step out and try to be there for others when we aren't connected to ourselves. And she speaks to that in that sentence. We need to get saner to do this effectively. It's a perfect place to start. So although we may not always be able to stop ourselves from bringing pain to others, our intention, and there it is again, our intention to sort out our confusion and be of service remains unwavering. So the 3 chapters there in the Way of Bodhisattva is talking again about aspiration and setting intention. And our wish to grow. If we care for ourselves as much as we want to care for others, we have to grow. And we have to step in, and growing is a day-by-day experience. Shantideva is passionately determined to keep his youthful curiosity alive. He aspires to continually stretch his heart beyond its current preconceptions and biases. Instead of staying stuck in his cocoon, he wants to grow in flexibility and enthusiasm. It requires courage and willingness to keep growing. It can get tiresome. There's days when I say, I'm tired of growing. I don't want to have to do this. It's a lot of work. It does take courage. But what's the alternative? If not this, what? And I personally don't see any other alternative. In chapter 4, Shantideva addresses 2 topics essential to keeping one's passion alive. Brian, there's that word passion again. The first is attentiveness, and the second is working skillfully with emotions. So I want us to take a pause here and look at how we do that. How does that show up for you? That is attentiveness. And working skillfully with emotions. And I'm not talking so much about others' emotions, but your own. When they surface, when they come up.
One of the things I like about this chapter is it provides questions around the kleshas, the strong emotions that cause suffering. And those questions, so whenever a certain emotion arises, and that can be, something that we have aversion to, or, a deep, like a deep desire for something, or even addiction to something that we enjoy. And the questions were, where does this klesha abide? Does it abide in the person I'm angry with? Does it abide in my sense perceptions, or somewhere in between? And then another group of questions of what fuels the thought? What is the nature of this anger? And who is it that's angry? Where did this thought come from? Where is it right now? And then where did it go? Those are really powerful questions that we have available when we're in the midst of whatever that strong emotion is.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the things that I have looked at. She refers to the tug of Shempa, that attachment, and that attachment to those kleshas or those emotions. Again, the klesha is the emotions that surface, and that we can in fact be seduced by kleshas. I like to feel this way. It serves a purpose. Maybe it's familiar. The sadness is familiar. I'm going to attach myself to that. It's something that I do well. I've learned to do it all my life. And so the question is it serving you? Is it providing you the freedom? Or is it keeping you stinted or stuck? And kleshas refer to strong emotions that reliably leads to suffering. Reliably leads to suffering. So I feel this and I know I'm going to suffer. I know this is going to hurt. We're familiar with that. We're familiar with that emotion, with those emotions. It's sometimes translated as neurosis, and in this text as afflictions and defiled emotions. In essence, kleshas are dynamic, ineffable energy, yet it's energy that easily enslaves us and causes us to act and speak in unintelligible ways. So think of the last time a strong emotion came up for you, or a familiar emotion came up for you. What was the path? How did it get served up? Where did it land? And then how did you, or did you, step out of it?
I had something this past weekend that with a child who hadn't been able to fill a prescription, and it's important to get this thyroid medication. And she was spiraling and couldn't get approval for the refill because of the weekend and stuff. And listening to how much she was suffering on the phone when I was in Cleveland, and she was hours and hours away. It brought me back to a previous time when she was suffering this much. Basically, the same thing happened a decade ago. And, I did get the PTSD stuff, but it was much easier to go to my breath and to try and access that, you know, she's been here before. She knows more. She knows she can come out on the other side of it. I know she can come out on the other side of it. And being upset isn't going to help with any solution or any, you know, in this work, I can't remember, it says if they need a nurse, you're a nurse. If whatever is needed, be that. And so without giving advice, I offered what I had, and it seemed to be a bridge. And I was really grateful that I didn't go as far into the trauma, but it did keep me from eating my brunch. That was it. My gut shut down. There was no way and one more bite was going to go in. I don't think I ate again until, 5 or 6 o'clock that night. This was like 11 in the morning with just no food because I couldn't handle it. But anyway, there's progress for me, not perfection.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm looking at your physical reaction to the situation and how it manifests in all of us, the physical, the emotional, what we do. How do we know we're getting caught or getting got? The Shempas arrive. Because I think in many ways, the more we're in tune with ourselves, how our body reacts, the sooner we can identify something's up. I'm reminded of working with the children and talking with them about their emotions. And I would tell them, you really know what it is. You just go to the teacher and just say something's up. And then the teacher, I alerted them, the various teachers, that when a student says that, to simply give them some space. And so I offer that as an option for us, just to know something's up. And I don't necessarily know what it is. For you, it was a past experience that you chose to really be aware of and do differently because of probably the work that you've done so far, Nancy. But and then to respect that, respect the work that we're in progress. We aren't in perfection. And some days we're going to slip, and some days we're not going to do so good. And that's where our partners, our Sangha, our good friends can help support. It's often helpful to say, I just need you to listen. I don't need any feedback, so that you're clear about what it is that you need. That's a great example, Nancy. I appreciate you sharing that. Any others that can share where your kleshas drive you and how you become aware of it or what you do with it? Yeah.
Just very quickly, I'll mention that as I'm reading this book, I'm noticing how anger, the emotion of my choice for me, has played out, and it's wreaked havoc, of course, in my life. And this past 2 weeks, ample opportunity, being back with family, as anger arises. And with this practice, I recognize that to slow down and take a breath, acknowledge it's there, and try to get in touch with, one, how it served me. Somehow I have found anger to be strengthening and invigorating, and I could push through, break things down with anger. I always thought I was a strong person, and anger was my friend. And it really served me well, I thought. And the last couple of weeks, what I've recognized when I slowed down and gave space to this emotion, my old friend, anger, what was behind it, or what is behind it, is deep grief, despair, and almost despondency, the deep despair about, you don't need to get into the particulars, but about things that are traumatic and are sad. And I thought, okay, give yourself some space to cry and to grieve and to feel what's happening with people's lives and how it impacts your life and all of that. And so that's all I'd like to say about that. But anger, how to work with that.
Sometimes kleshas are subtle, and sometimes they're strong, and sometimes they're effective. And for that time, it works. It's important, perhaps. Pema writes, kleshas arise with a subtle tension inherent in dualistic perception. If we don't catch this tension, it sets off a chain reaction of for or against. These reactions quickly escalate, resulting in full-blown aggression, craving, ignorance, jealousy, envy, and pride. In other words, full-blown misery for ourselves and others. Kleshas survive on ignorance, ignorance of their insubstantial nature and the way we reinforce them, and they are fueled by thoughts. That their power can be diffused by attentiveness is the main theme of chapter 4. So we're talking about being a bodhisattva, and we've wound ourselves down into kleshas and the emotions. And people that we work with or want to be with or are confronted with have their own set of kleshas. And some of them may bump up against us, and some of it may be something that we can hold lightly and allow just to be present with. But that awareness, the attentiveness, is what Shantideva talks about, and what Pema Chodron is talking about, is one of the first steps to be able to serve as a bodhisattva, to move into the bodhisattva way. Shantideva begins, he gives us an opportunity to look at how to do this attentiveness. And he has, there are 5 ways to apply this. And in verse 1, the children of the conqueror who thus have firmly grasped his bodhicitta should never turn aside from it, but always strive to keep its disciplines. So attentiveness, according to Pema Chodron, to keep its disciplines, this refers specifically to the 6 paramitas, which Shantideva will discuss later in this book. So looking at the 5 attentiveness ways of working with this. He says on chapter 9, anyone who for a single instant halts the merit of a bodhisattva will wander endlessly in states of misery because the welfare of all beings is brought low. So wavering on our willingness or ability to step into being a bodhisattva. The second grave mistake is anything that halts the merit of bodhisattva. This is not so hard to do, she writes. When we hurt or insult people we dislike, who knows? We might be obstructing the merit of a bodhisattva. The best advice, therefore, is to treat everyone with care. That's a great intention. Not always so easy to have, especially when we might be in a challenged place or having a hard day, and someone is giving us something that you want to fight back at or step into. Verse 11, and one who wanders in samsara, who time and time again embraces bodhicitta, only to destroy it through his faults, will long be barred from bodhisattva grounds. So in that regard, it really emphasizes the urgency to which we need to step in or should step in or want to step into this path. If we continually renew and break our commitments, which is going back to the last chapter, we will long be barred from progressing along the bodhisattva path. We won't, however, be barred forever, despite the wording of verse 9, which is, and anyone who for a single instant halts the merit of a bodhisattva will wander endlessly in state of misery because the welfare of all beings is brought low. She's saying not forever. It's not a do or die thing. Some states of mind may seem endless, but even the worst suffering is impermanent and there's always a way out. I think that's a really critical thing for us to realize. This too shall pass. It's an interesting, for those of you that read it, 3 attitudes prevent us from receiving a continual flow of blessings. They are compared to 3 pots: full pot, a pot with poison in it, and a pot with a hole in the bottom. The pot that's filled to the brim is like a mind full of opinions and preconceptions. Opinions and preconceptions. How many times do you see something or hear something and you immediately go to what you believe to be true? Because of the person who's saying it or because of previous situation? We already know it all. We have so many fixed ideas that nothing new can affect us or cause us to question our assumptions. The pot containing poison is like a mind that's so cynical, critical, and judgmental that everything is poisoned by this harshness. It allows for no openness or no willingness to explore the teachings or anything else that challenges our righteous stance. I know this. This is what I understand it to be. Versus being open to perhaps another understanding. And finally, the third pot with a hole is like a distracted mind. Our body is present, but we're lost in thought. We're so busy thinking about our dream vacation or what's for dinner or what might happen that we're completely deaf to what's being said. So I'm certain that all of us fall into one of those pots every now and then. And again, I wonder, how do you know? How do you know when you've slipped into one of those pots? Page 85, she talks again about what Shantideva says in verse 16. This precious life is like a dream. Even when it's a very pleasant dream, it's fleeting and uncertain. We will waste our good fortune if we take it for granted. And so what Shantideva is trying to do at this point in his verses is get us to really start paying attention to how we get caught, how we step into Shempa, and how our kleshas or our emotions take us and drive us and control us, and what we can do to step away from it. And what our intention is, our practice is to notice it and to work with it. And some of these, I know some of mine are old thoughts and feelings. And when I think I've got a good hold on it, I'm sailing along, I get got again. So but it's faster and it's quicker and I can move through it in an easier way. Verse 17, and yet the way I act is such that I shall not regain a human life, and losing this, my precious human form, my evils will be many, virtues none. So in that way, her book, No Time to Lose, makes a lot of sense. And in fact, could probably be a good mantra for us each day. So the essential point here is that we can at any time choose the path of suffering or happiness. At any point. At any point. What are you willing to do to feel better? Any thoughts so far on what we've looked at or talked about?
I think that no time to lose. Why are we here at this time in the progression of the world? The world needs us to do this work now. And so no time to lose, not, well, a couple lives later, I'll get serious. The world needs this kind of work now. So I feel like I'm lucky enough to have this body. I feel like it's my duty, it's who I am. It's what I have to do because that's why I'm here now. And the Buddha is here now instead of sometime in the, well, we'll be here in the future, but we're all needed now. To me, it's not even a question. And I'm grateful and humbled to be able to be here, to be of whatever use I'm able to be. I think it's a blessing that we are all here in this time. Because we and hundreds and hundreds of others of us are needed. Not for us, but for the all.
There were a lot of things that I liked about this chapter. And I definitely related to a lot of it, just with the cliches and the Shempa that is so common in a human life. But one of the things that I liked is advice to treat our crippling emotions like drug pushers. If we don't want to stay addicted for life, and I really did kind of resonate with that, being addicted to feelings or thoughts, like because they are familiar or I don't know, there's just a deep groove, and it's difficult sometimes. And that's where I tend to have a hard time seeing the repetitive nature of those things. But just having a different way to look at it like this, like a drug pusher. If we don't want to stay addicted for life, we have to see that our negative emotions weaken us and cause us harm. And that it is just as difficult to detox from emotions as it is to recover from heavy drugs or alcohol. So just really seeing it as kind of addictive and kind of a couple of things. One, just bringing the awareness to the situation. After reading this today, I woke up and my intention was awareness. Like I feel like I'm aware, but maybe in a different, deeper way, I can be aware and just look more critically, almost like a scientist, just really kind of trying to dissect what's happening and really interrupt at the very beginning of the process and see it as it is for what it is, which is like an addiction, and kick it out like the drug pusher that it is, So just taking a little bit more heavy ammo to it in a way, seeing it more clearly and being, and just know, and another thing I highlighted was that nothing outside of us has the power to hurt us like the pusher. So just really recognizing it for the powerful thing that it is, and but also our chance to, over time, step by step, to diffuse it, to weaken it, to question it, to reframe it, or whatever it is. That's the goal.
I appreciate that analogy to addictive thinking because there's actually a book called Addictive Thinking. And it's because it goes back to neurons that fire together, wire together. And it's that pattern and being able to take the pause and use the Dharma to break it and make a decision. And for me, imaging has been helpful for decades when I would look at anger, or for me, fear was my biggest gremlin, and just go, oh, hi, gremlin. Here you are again. Are you going to take my hand and help me do everything I've always done? Or am I going to just say, I see you there. Let me pause and think. What are my choices? Ones I've never done before even, and for me, having this ugly shenpa of a gremlin, that I could visualize would give me enough moment somehow, and it gave me humor. I could, instead of looking at myself with shame that it was there again, was this humor of this funny caricature gremlin that I could go, okay, hi, now let's make a choice. Thank you.
I think that's a great way to manage some of these feelings, is to maybe not take it so seriously. And sometimes it takes a while to get beyond the initial stuck state or shimpa, but to not take it so seriously. It doesn't have to be this bad. So I like your little gremlin. That's a great idea.
So page 101, it says, we build up fantasy worlds in our minds, causing the kleshas to escalate. Then, like awakening from a dream, we discover this fantasy has no substance and the kleshas have no basis.
It's great. Yep. On 101, the other question that she poses is, where does your klesha abide? Where does it abide? And that, again, I really am a strong believer in the senses, and knowing your body and where it starts, because your body is the first alert system, and it's going to tell you when something's up. But if we don't pay attention to that, wherever that is, whether it's in the hands, the jaw, often it's the jaw. For me, it's the gut. And when I start feeling it there, something's going on. I wasn't even aware of it. And then it moves for me. And then it gets up to here. And I feel it, the warmth of it. And so there's plenty of signals that help us understand when we're being got. And then the question is, do I want to go there? Do I want to? And sometimes maybe it's, I'm just full of it and I just need to do it. And I know it could be a disaster. Or my sister-in-law makes up words, and she combines words. And sometimes they're great words. And she often refers to things like that as a disastrophe. And I think when it gets that big, it is a disastrophe. Where does the klesha abide? And it goes on, does it abide in the person I'm angry with? So that's something that Elsa, you had brought up. Or is it within myself? Is it the situation? Look closely at how you feel the clashes with your thoughts. Again, I'm reminded of when I was studying my Zen practice down at Upaya and reading Joan Halifax's book on being with dying. And she had a line that has stuck with me ever since, and that was years ago. And she says, pain is inevitable. Suffering is a story we weave around the pain. Suffering is a story we weave around the pain. So Nancy, I'm reminded of when you first started talking about your situation with the medication. And it could easily have allowed you to weave maybe a very old story around that circumstance. And choosing to weave a different story. Or not a story at all. To allow sometimes just to let it sit, to let it be. And then just like, go ahead.
I think also the book that you're going to teach later was helpful because I didn't go to fixing, and which, yeah, I in offering what I had, it took, it was an agreement. It was, oh, I forget the term, not fixed, but serve. It was a service, but it was only offered. And so for me, that really kept me in the present and kept me from doing my usual catastrophizing and the extra worry stuff. So, but these studies are all interwoven and they are becoming so live in my life. I'm very grateful.
Any other thoughts, comments, experiences on where this kind of these issues or situations show up for you?
I wanted to share. So when I was reading this chapter this morning, I was just thinking of all of the time that I had in the monastery and how our practice was to be attentive to our daily actions and how we interact with others and ourselves. And as I was reading this, I was just really grateful for the practice that I had there. And it just brought me a lot of joy in that. And how I walk in or how I interact with others in my daily life it shows. And there were so many highlights that I had in my phone here, and there's just so much that I can share, but in such little time. And I'm just really, and there's this one here. I'm not sure what page it's on, but on my phone, it's right above 4.28, and it says, "From moment to moment, we can choose how we relate to our emotions. This power of choice gives us freedom, and it would be crazy not to take advantage of it." And as I am just listening to the words that are coming out of my mouth, is just being on this path with everyone here is such a freedom in that, and how we may have challenges with one another. That is also it also brings joy since we practice with one another every day, and that's what I'm
guess I'm reminded when you share that, sister, that this, and you've all mentioned it to various levels of how we keep stepping in step by step. And that the practice of yesterday or something we read a week ago or a year ago maybe comes back around like, oh, there it is again. And certainly the study with Buddha Master and the whole concept of cultivation, and that we are just cultivating, stepping in and learning it maybe a second time or a third time or the first time, or hearing it from someone, that it resonates in lots of different ways, and to be grateful for that and to be grateful for each other, because this is a path for us to be able to not only care for ourselves, but to serve others in so many ways, subtle or large ways. And in the end, if we're feeling clear and clean with ourselves, it feels pretty fabulous. It feels pretty fabulous. I'd like to end with the last paragraph of this chapter. Just as a sick person won't get well without following her doctor's advice, we won't be helped by these teachings unless we put them into practice, the cultivation. This is not academic study. We could study the Bodhicharya daily and still keep strengthening our kleshas. These teachings are a way of life to awaken bodhicitta, nurture it, and have it flourish. Take Shantideva's words very personally and use them whenever you find yourself getting hooked and carried away. If you saw my bathroom mirror, you'd see lots of Post-its up as reminders that I see first thing in the morning. And sometimes they're statements and sometimes they're poems, and they're great reminders. Any comments for now, for today?
Are we going to read chapter 5?
Nancy, the next reading for next week is going to be Taming the Mind, Vigilance Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 and Part 2. So it's going to be a bigger reading, just so we can get through some of this. So the next, actually the rest of the book, I think there's a lot of Part 1s and Part 2s, and so Vigilance Part 1 and Part 2. Okay. The second one, Vigilance Part 2, is the 3 disciplines. So again, we're learning step by step of how to take our steps into each day. Okay, I'd like to close with this. May you be at peace. May your hearts remain open. May you awaken to the light of your own true nature. May you be a source of healing for all beings.